Hi, everybody. Welcome to the TFFDS Future Discussion Show. I'm Dr. Eileen C. Operada, and with us is Walter, as well as Dr. Salman Delvey. And today's discussion will be centering on something very, very interesting. And I'm going to let Dr. Delvey as well as Walter to introduce to you what we're going to talk about, because they are the experts, not me, but I'm here to facilitate.
Okay, so let me introduce myself. I'm Salman Dalvi, and I am the CEO of the Global Regenerative Medicine Society. As we are global, and I like to speak on various biotechnology subjects and health, including sickle cell anemia, which is a big topic for South Africa and the whole African continent. So I'll leave it over to Walter, and Walter, you can go ahead with your introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Dalvey. It's Walt Crompton here. I am a kind of a long-time longevity and health activist, but it turns out that I have a bit of a special, also an investor and volunteer and guinea pig and anything I can do. But turns out I also have some interest in reproductive science. I invest in a company that does ovarian rejuvenation, and I have authored a paper on optimizing longevity and health by enhanced prenatal and developmental practices.
Wow, that's amazing. Actually, these tools are really, really hot topic. So I'm going to just dive right into that. First to Dr. Delvey about sickle cell anemia. Could you give us some statistics about what you understand of the effects of sickle cell anemia for especially the African descent, and then the current status of treatment? And what's so different from what we're talking about today? How is it so different from what has been proposed? Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. In terms of statistics, majority of it's really hard to put numbers on. There's a lot of numbers globally that are banded, that over 3 million, over 5 million, over 1 in 9 and 1 in 10. But really, the data capturing of sickle cell disease is not as accurate as we could get. So what we would say is the prevalence is very, very high in the African communities, African ancestry, and because of migration. The way I look at it, with migration, we get them in Middle East, you get it in India, you get it in America, and with interracial marriages, the chances of getting sickle cell and the demographics change. So the numbers are huge. From what I can see, and we can't pinpoint an exact figure. But what I can say is, in Africa, we have children under the age of 5 are normally dying regularly, and nearly 10,000 children a day are born with sickle cell across Africa. So there is a big issue, and currently the treatments, what are there is no curative treatment. And what I would like to talk about is curative treatment for this disease. Whatever happens now, the child could be anemic. The child can have a stroke. A child can have a problem with seeing. So that you can have jaundice, pale color, fatigue, pain crisis, which is a big thing. So yeah, there's quite a variety of symptoms, and there is a lot of pain, suffering. They become a burden on society because they're not producing. And in Africa, that's a big thing. If you're not producing, you're a burden. And if you're a burden, you are outcasted. So it's not very nice. And there is a curative treatment, but the curative treatment is very, very expensive.
If I may ask a fundamental question that may be of interest to the audience as well, is sickle cell genetically recessive or dominant?
Okay, so sickle cell is a genetic disease, so it will be dominant in that particular case.
I mean, is it recessive or dominant? That is, do you need 2 sickle cell genes or only 1?
Yeah. Well, no, you need 2 sickle cell genes. With the mutation, you'll need 2 sickle cell genes.
So if you have only 1 sickle cell gene, you don't show any symptoms at all.
Then you have the trait, and you may if you have sickle cell trait, but if your partner then also has sickle cell and you have offspring, then they would definitely, well, not definitely, right, but more than likely have the disease. So you could have a trait and then you can have the disease.
So even if you have only 1 sickle cell gene, you do get reduced symptoms, but you do get symptoms. Is that correct?
You do get some symptoms, but the chances of if your partner has the same thing, then the offspring will have a full-blown disease and a full-blown crisis.
Right. So if both parents have 1 sickle cell gene, 1 in 4 of the children will have the disease full-blown. 2 of 4 will have halfway, and 1 of 4 will be free of the disease.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. It's just 2 genes involved, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. So
thank you.
I just kind of want to mention that I've seen people in Nigeria, like my very good friend, who cannot get married, who was in love with each other because they both have recessive genes. I've seen young people that I work with family dying, and they themselves at the risk of dying basically on a day-to-day basis. I've seen them struggling with food, between food and medicine. I've seen very talented youth, and I'm sure Dr. Delphi, you have quite a few examples about that, and maybe you could share with us, maybe give us some hope. What could you bring? What's the hope out there? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I work with stem cells and stem cell therapy, and in particular, I am a great believer in cord blood stem cells and stem cell, and the detail, I could go on for hours about it. So basically, I believe in working with stem cells, but my first or second interaction with sickle cell is I'd heard about the disease, and I had a colleague who was about 25 and of Caribbean descent, and this is one of the examples, one of the 2, and she's of Caribbean, and I used to go to the office and try and work, and I knew that she was a reception member of staff, and I happened to give her quite a lot of work on donor screening, and she disappeared. And the next thing I knew, that she was not there for 3 or 4 weeks, and my work was pending, and I was very furious and very annoyed. And a colleague of mine told me, "Hey, easy. You know what? She's got sickle cell." I said, "So what?" Okay, I wasn't empathetic at all, or I wasn't sympathetic, or said, "So what? It's a job. She needs to do her job. If she's, we pay her." And the colleague said, "Yeah, but you know about sickle cell." And I was, so, okay. So I read about it a little bit more, and I picked the phone up, and this girl was in tears on the phone, wanting to do the work, and said, "Look, I'm so sorry that I've done," but I could see that I could not hear her. I could not hear her properly, and I went to the airport, to the hospital, and just thought, let me see what she was. And she was in a crisis. She was in excruciating pain. She could not speak. She was very, very bony. She had lost a lot of weight. And to me, it was like, hang on, you know what? This girl wants to produce. She wants to do things for society. She wants to be a part of society. What can we do? And the only thing that she could do is get a blood transfusion from time to time, and that would keep her happy for a few weeks. A lot of painkillers, and it was full of cocktail of medicines, but it wasn't solving her problem. Her lungs she was asthmatic, she had kidney disease, her lungs were, she couldn't breathe at times, very, very pale. And I was looking at all the symptoms, and I said, well, we need to do something. And another colleague of mine said, oh, look, there are stem cell transplants, but she can't afford it, because it's over £60,000, and there is no match. There's nothing available, and she's not even on the match register because there's no money, so no one's going to search for a match for her. So what are we going to? So we can't do anything. So she'll have to be on the medication. And I said, look, but you know what? That means her lifespan is roughly maximum 40 years, 40, 45. And she's a young lady. She's pretty. What of that? And the answer was blank. Well, there's nothing we can do. There's no funding. So that's where my interest began in stem cells and sickle cells, particular. And I said, well, we need to do something of these for her and other patients across the globe. And then many years, about a year and a half later, I think I'll keep telling this story, and I think I've told you guys many a times when we've met privately. It was the question of a child who needed stem cells, who had already had a stroke and was a 3-year-old and needed stem cells, and their funding was found. Parents had child, again, as you said, both the parents had the dominant gene. So, and they had one child, the first child was 3.5 at that time, and was diagnosed with sickle cell. They had a second child who was not a match for the child. So they could not get the transplant done, and the third child, when they knew that they were having a third child, they said, okay, there is a chance of this child having a match with the placenta when they did the tests, and I was called to do the procedure. So at that particular time, I did the procedure, and I was still we collected the stem cells, the child went away, and I forgot all about it. And I was called about 3 months later by the consultant at the hospital, who was the obstetric consultant, and he asked me to come in and see him. And I thought, okay, we've done something wrong. So what do we do? How do we correct ourselves? Because obstetric consultants are supposed to be God in those particular days. So, but I went and there was, after a long discussion, and the door was opened, and there was a set of parents with a 3-year-old child, 3.5, something like that. And he goes to me, "Doctor, thank you for saving my life." And to me, it was like, hang on, what does this person know about life? Has he been taught that? But I dropped. The parents were very, very grateful. All the 3 children were there, and I had made a difference in the quality of life of this child. This child must be about 20, 21 now, or an adult and a producing adult. He went into remission in about 6 months, and that's the thing that drives me, that we need to do a lot more. The parents were of Zimbabwean origin, and they had come to the UK and to work, but that's the story. And then decided, okay, no, we need to do something. And whenever it comes to sickle cell transplants, I know there's a 95% under fives. There's a 95% curative chance if you get a good match, but the price is very high. So because of that, people don't get stem cell transplants. Okay, so Walter, you were
saying that we have one child and
then,
couldn't have any more. And then, so we actually are foster parents. We've had 8 foster children. We take teenagers, so we get them kind of late in life. But one cultural thing that needs to be conquered is the prejudice against adopting children. There's a lot of children that need good parents. Your children do not have to have your genetics. We need to get over that. I mean, maybe it's not mine to say, but I think that there's a lot of places where the custom says you must have your children must be your bloodline. That needs to go away, because I'm sure in Africa there's a lot of children that need good parents, and people who know they have sickle cell genes probably would be wise to look into that. There's a lot of kids that they could love and they would love them back.
Okay, Walter, in that case, I think I'm just going to speak. We've got an article from a magazine from a lady called Aisha, who is of Asian Malay origin, and she has adopted 2 African children. Again, and her story is amazing. The amount of effort she goes to because her husband can't have children. Again, fertility issues with her husband. So they've gone and adopted this particular two boys, Ibrahim and Usman. I've actually met Ibrahim myself. So amazing guy, or going to a choir, singing, playing basketball. I've met him online, and it was a brilliant child. And she does more than a normal parent would do. And I've seen other parents with sickle cell children. They don't know what to do with the child because it's a burden on them. They can't because the child may go in crisis and they can't go out and work. And if they don't go out and work, I was speaking with someone. They don't go out and work. There won't be bread on the table, and this is a big problem. I was speaking with another lady today, actually this morning, who has got sickle cell, and she used to travel 2.5 hours to come to work at a hospital, and that's how I knew, and travel back 2.5 hours every day. But by the time having her sickle cell, by the time she came to work, she was tired, could not produce, could not do much. So she still had the job, but eventually she had to give up. A crazy situation. So
can is that okay for me to ask this very important question so that I can, because we still, there's so much to talk about. That's why we want to invite everybody to come to the TAFFDS Afrolongevity Summit in August. You can find that on www.taffds.org and register for the event, because we're going to have a side event just to focus on sickle cell anemia, and we want to know the answer to democratizing treatments, stem cell treatment for sickle cell anemia patients. It's heartbreaking to hear the stories that you share with us, but we are going to come together. I just want everybody to also know that Dr. Delphi, he has lived in Tanzania, he has lived in South Africa, and he is an African in that sense. So he is very much in the reality of what Africans are suffering in terms of sickle cell anemia. We hope that all of you will try to join us in Johannesburg this summer, late August, and then you can find all the information on the website, and then you can also see on our screen where the website is. So thank you. Just a real quick wrap-up question, if you don't mind, Selma. What do we need to do to democratize treatment, stem cell treatment for sickle cell?
There are about 8 points, but because we are short of time, I would say the one is to get accessibility. Two is to and the other one is education. Okay, if we educate everyone properly on ground, that look, they are, because at African society we have so many children being born. To those healthy children who are born, their placentas and the cord blood that we can collect, we can collect that, find a match, and transplant that into children and make them and let them go into remission. Let's start today with children who are our future, and then the next generation we can see how we progress, because algorithms will change in the next 3 to 5 years with cell and gene therapy.
So we basically need institutional support to basically have a bank for stem cells. I know that we talked about that a little bit last time. What kind of infrastructure that we need to have, banks like this? But maybe let's turn the table to water, and I would love to come back to in terms of building, the infrastructure need, and then how do we facilitate that to happen. So we're gonna, just so that we give Water a fair chance to explore his topic as well, because it's also a very important topic. So Water, I'm going to turn the table to you now and asking, okay, so infertility issue is a huge issue for people who cares. Now, people who have normal reproductive function, they're okay. They are not like particularly concerned about for infertility issues. But if somebody who has had problems with miscarriage, with getting pregnant, and so on and so forth, that's a huge thing for them. And in Africa, it's even more important, because I've known people who said in Africa, even if you have 3 children, to them it's still, sometimes traditional society, they feel like it's not quite enough. We're not going to get into the topic of political, argument about quality versus quantity, so on and so forth. But we're just going to focus on like fertility issues. Water, share with us your insights in this on this topic. Thank you.
Well, before I launch into that very quickly, I want to say that although sickle cell is undoubtedly the biggest single genetic-based disease, there are actually many others. For instance, hemophilia. There are many others that could also be addressed by exactly the same treatment, that is stem cell treatment. So it's almost unfortunate that it's named sickle cell, because it nominally excludes all those other diseases that will also benefit from these advances. Okay, that said. Now,
that's a very good point. Thank you.
Yeah. So the regarding fertility, from a longevity perspective, it's not fertility that is the problem. It is the biological state of being fertile that is the goal. That is to say, hormone balance and such like that. So when you have ovarian rejuvenation or something like that, you're actually well, today, for instance, we can hold off menopause for probably as much as 10 years, just with existing therapies that are actually just emerging. So it makes it so that your skin remains nicer and you're just generally healthier. Albeit your menstrual periods continue, so it's not all wonderful. But we're animals; we have to accept that. But nevertheless, but But fertility treatment make it, what we already have and what's coming, make it so that people can hope to have children quite a bit longer into their life. Women in particular, men can continue to have children, albeit with reduced sperm count, well into their 70s and 80s and even beyond. Not so for women. Help me out, Dr. Dalby.
No. I totally agree with you. I'm a passionate believer that women. There is a big issue in Asia and Africa where with premature ovarian failure, and that's the area that concerns me quite a bit, and that's why I would say the rejuvenation of the ovarian rejuvenation is very, very important, because that's the taboo that goes around with not being able to have children or not being fertile for women of certain cultures. It makes it very, very burdensome, and that leads to mental health. And no one should go through mental health issues. Okay. No person on this planet should have mental health issues. We were not born to have mental health issues. We were born to live a happy life. So with problems with fertility, bring in a lot of other issues, a lot of side issues in family life. And in family life, you don't really want young ladies at the age of 30, 32 who have not been able to have children committing suicide. That's completely wrong, taking their own life. We want longevity to be a really important, it's a real important subject. Okay, it needs to, and fertility plays a big part in that.
If I could shift it just a little bit and also make a little plug for our magazine, the Magazine of the Future. I have submitted an essay that I authored. Well, obviously, if it's my essay. And it turns out that there's numerous things that are very tragically underexploited that increase your fertility without any fancy treatment. A lot of problems with gestation and even birth defects and autism and all kinds of things like that interfere with happy family are actually preventable by simple lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, and so on, supplements. So, and this has not been added. I mean, everybody knows, don't smoke when you're pregnant. Okay, everybody knows, eat well when you're pregnant. Don't get drunk every night. But there's actually much, much more than that. Although those things are key, very, very, very important. But by providing a good incubator for the fetus, that goes a long way to increase fertility, and not just fertility, but the health of the baby.
Dr. Walter, I have a question about that, because when you and I had that dinner over the Ethiopian restaurant, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
You said that it can be reversed. You said that menopause can be reversed and fertility is still possible after menopause. On what basis do you say that?
Well, in the spirit of full disclosure, but I don't want to put the chicken before the egg. But in fact, I'm invested. I have a small investment. What is it? $10,000 in an ovarian rejuvenation company. But let me say that I invested in that company because I believe in it. Not that I'm not advancing it because I've invested in the company. But I believe Dr. Dalby would be far better at speaking about this. The simple fact is there's a variety of things. And in fact, they do include things like diet and exercise, along with some exotherapy and so on and so on. So I'd like to switch back to Dr. Dalby. Yeah.
Yeah, with fertility, and there are stem cell treatments in the clinical trial phase, and because they are currently if there is no there are some that have got an IND and a BLA, so they are regularized. There are others that are not, and they're undergoing the process. But those studies are in phase 2 and phase 3 of clinical trials. So a phase 3 clinical trial means you can do it on humans. There are molecules. If I call them molecules, it might just be easy. There may be transporting agents or proteins which are in the stem cells, in the mitochondria, things like exosomes and cytokines that have known to help rejuvenate the ovaries and the testicles and produce and help with erectile dysfunction, help with ovarian rejuvenation. So there is a lot of ongoing major studies that have been done, and they are in, as I said, in phase 3. A lot of them are in phase 3, and they will be licensed. Basically they are therapies. They work, okay, but licensing procedures say, oh no, you haven't proven this. You've proven the safety and efficacy of it. However, you haven't proven that they work every time, and they are cheaper than other drugs. So that's the stage that we are at.
Okay, thank you so much. What does it, just the last question, because that really raised a lot of hopes for people who's, especially career woman, who's like having their children later. What's the horizon look like in terms of timeline?
If I'm answer the timeline is majority of post COVID, a lot of so COVID was very bad for the world, but in many times their research facilities really started booming, and a lot of research work went into the mRNA, and sort of what we were working for years, it's sped up. Now the question happens is organizations like the FDA do not have enough people or enough trained scientists to approve the workload. So there may be, if there are enough people there at the FDA or the MHRA or at NICE to have a look at this paperwork and say, yes, this is good, this data works, you can now go for stage 2, you can go for stage 3, you can go for stage 4 clinical trials, and you can make it into a therapy. Well, it's a question of time, and that's the whole problem, is shortage of manpower globally. And again, there are other political problems, because people who may be sitting in the United Kingdom may not be able to work in across in Miami or to write those papers up and get those papers ready because of current regulations where the United States wants people from the United States to get employment over overseas people. So these are the sort of issues that's very political and a very thing. So I could say clinically 3 years, but or clinically we are ready, but again, regulatory terms, it could be anything between now and 5 years.
Well, one thing we are addressing here to some degree is the lack of focus on the issue. We spend, countless millions and billions of dollars on things that are relatively unimportant, and meanwhile, basic health issues go wanting. So, and then, of course, fertility being one of them. So, by expanding the awareness of the issue and making people focus on it, that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, especially in the American society, that's super important. It's like if you make the headline news, and there's a whole lot more money is going to pour in there. Now, I want to also just kind of touch on something before we kind of conclude our interview here. There's so much more to talk about, and I'm gonna keep inviting the both of you back. But this time, I can see how important it is to have like a 3 people dialogue instead of just a 2 people dialogue, because it really just introduced so many different perspectives and the depth to the topic. The topic today is actually about longevity. You know, the role of fertility or infertility or fertility, you know, in the longevity movement. Why did you come up with that topic?
Well, I was before we got started. I was speaking with Dr. Dalby. I have a friend who is a kind of a rabid antinatalist. He's a good fellow, but he's kind of funny about that issue. And he said, "Oh, pregnancy shortens your lifespan." And I looked it up, and exactly the opposite is true, for reasons which I could go into in a longer discussion. It actually turns out that having children actually extends your life for both the father and the mother. I think it has to do with probably a hormetic effect where the struggle actually strengthens you. So anyway.
That is super interesting. I didn't know that. And that's very encouraging, actually.
Yes, up to 14 children, according to this article. And this was published by the what is their name? The Centers for Disease Control. So it's not some remote publication. Now, in olden days, this is actually something new. It's important to mention this. Anybody can go to an old graveyard and they will see a lot of gravestones where there's a mother and a child right next to each other, died on the same day. That is the history of humanity. However, that's yesterday. Today, almost nobody dies in childbirth anymore. I mean, children with serious problems sometimes still die, but by and large, even if you have, you know, a child is too big, or most everything is curable if you're at the hospital. And I'm sure Dr. Dalby could speak to that much more than I can.
Yeah, I think that's the problem we have. Unfortunately, what you say is true in the Western world. We have hundreds and hundreds of children across Africa, whether it's Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, who actually do die in childbirth, and we need that's something totally different. And something when I would trying to work with is we need a lot of maternity packs to go to these African countries to help them prevent that kind of thing, especially in rural Africa, even in Ghana and Nigeria.
So it's because they don't have appropriate medical help when they're delivering.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's terrible.
No, but why, how did fertility actually enhance life? Is it because, okay, just like yesterday, I was driving, right? And I was like, okay, I need to drive very carefully because I have a daughter. I want to make sure that I'm alive to see her growing up. So is it emotional or mental? Is it actually biological or societal? What is that? That's like, and then you said 14. You're saying that's as you can reproduce up to 14 children, and you will every single children that you have will enhance your life. If it's so, I mean, where does it come in when the actual decreased quality of life affects, you know, become counterproductive of what the statistic you just gave us?
I cannot answer that question, and in fact, the paper did not answer that question. It's simply a statement of fact that that parents that have appropriate medical care actually can expect to live. Actually, it's like a per baby thing. For each baby you have, you live 0.23 years longer. I don't remember the numbers, but it's interesting. I mean, it came as a big surprise to me. I knew that having a single child was good for the average mother, the average woman, in terms of
So-
longevity, but I didn't realize it extended out to 14 children, which these days nobody in the United States has 14 children anymore.
So whilst we're talking, I've actually looked at it. Like I've actually gone and had a quick look at a few things, and I can see the people who in my immediate vicinity and immediate people, and I've looked at it, and it's of interesting with the sort of Arab African heritage, Indian mix in there. Wherever there is two families and educated people, two educated parents, two children, they have passed away anything between the age of 65 and 77. And whereas I have got people who have got 12 or 14 children, and I've just counted 3 or 4 families in each one of my vicinity. And I know, and the ladies are, the husbands have passed away in their 80s, and the ladies are now in 92 and 96. And they just goes to, and they're very frail, but they're there.
You know, from the outside, it's kind of like the idea of having 14 children almost makes me wish for death. It's a lot of work, but actually it's good for you, you know.
Yeah, but that's very true. And if you go across Africa, and Dr. Eileen, you've seen that as well. That's why the older the people, the more respected they get in Africa, and they're very, very much. You'll see the mothers, grandmothers, great grandmothers who are there at the. Some of them say they're 80, some of them say 85, 87. You have these older people. We don't have statistics to really prove every single one of them, but I think and they've had 14 children, 12 children, 11 children, whether they are in Morocco or somewhere in southern in the southern part of Africa. I don't like using the word sub-Saharan Africa, so or even in West Africa. So that answers that question, I hope.
Yeah, you did, and I'll tell you this. The reason that I would love to have more children, but I didn't have my father, my mother, nuclear family, and by the time it gets to me and immigrate to the US, I don't have the infrastructure to support.
Absolutely.
And it's just, so this is again another topic that we should develop. But my God, seriously, there's 3 things that we talked about so far is mind blowing, and I'm telling you. Too bad this is not live stream, and I feel like we need to have a live stream because there'll be so many questions from the audience. Number 1, postmenopausal fertility is possible. That's just blown my mind. It's like playing the role of God. Number 2, democratizing sickle cell anemia, and there's treatment for that. And number 3 is the fact that the more children you have, the longer you live. And so this is just, I'm telling you, this is like an atomic bomb. If we post it, yeah, and people will
Sorry.
I just want to say quickly, I put in the chat area a link to the article for those who'd like to read it.
Okay, great. I'm going to copy it, and then, yeah. Well,
I was just going to quickly say, come to South Africa. It's going to be fun. 22nd in August. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because you're gonna meet you're gonna meet Water, the very charming Water. You're gonna meet Dr. Delvey, and you're gonna meet a whole lot more people. Just amazing, has different specialties, and they actually both Dr. Delvey as well as Water know these people as well. So it's kind of like a global longevity family, and this is the first time it's going to be held in Africa at the Cradle of Humankind in Johannesburg. Come, just join us, and you get to have them sign your book.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Bravo.
And I'm going to go one step further. Sponsor us. Sponsor the event. Sponsor the magazine. We know, this is for your future. It's the future of mankind we are talking about. So from cradle to grave, longevity, amazing. Just be there.
Yeah, especially if you're a drug company and if you are pharmaceutical, I should say pharmaceutical is like drug company, or any medical society, doctor's office that's working on fertility issue, gynecologist. If you want to have a presence, especially in this longevity movement, this is the best time to join us. And we're going to feature you. This is still very new in Africa. And so if you sponsor us, you're going to be the star. I promise that. So just come join us. Even if you just show up, be part of the movement. Okay. All right. It's so great to have you both here. And
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're brilliant.
Yeah. No.
Thank you, Dr. Eileen. Thank you very much.
So much fun. Like every single time I'm here, I feel so privileged, and I have to thank Osinakachi, which is the founder of TAFFDS, for giving me this opportunity and giving us this opportunity to learn from each other. Is mind-blowing. All right, so until next time, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.